If you are looking to study in a way that is neither those black and white books, nor those same traditional lectures, and not even those commercialized online videos, but something that goes beyond all this, then welcome to isaykids. Today we would study grade 10 biology chapter life processes. This one's quite amazing since we shall see different processes that are required for us to live. That sounds pretty exciting, isn't it? So, shall we begin? First, how do we tell the difference between what is alive and what is not alive? If we see a dog running, or a cow chewing cud, or a man shouting loudly on the street, we know that these are living beings. What if the dog, or the cow, or the man were asleep? We would still think that they were alive. But how did we know that? We see them breathing and we know that they are alive. What about plants? How do we know that they are alive? We see them green, some of us will say. But what about plants that have leaves of colors other than green? They grow over time, so we know that they are alive, some will say. In other words, we tend to think of some sort of movement, either growth related or not, as common evidence for being alive. But a plant that is not visibly growing is still alive, and some animals can breathe without visible movement. So, using visible movement as the defining characteristic of life is not enough. Movements over very small scales will be invisible to the naked eye. Movements of molecules, for example, is this invisible molecular movement necessary for life? If we ask this question to professional biologists, they will say yes. In fact, viruses do not show any molecular movement in them until they infect some cell, of course. And that is partly why there is a controversy about whether they are truly alive or not. Why are molecular movements necessary for life? We have seen in earlier classes that living organisms are well organized structures. They can have tissues, tissues have cells, cells have smaller components in them, and so on. Because of the effects of the environment, this organized, ordered nature of living structures is very likely to keep breaking down over time. If order breaks down, the organism will no longer be alive. So, living creatures must keep repairing and maintaining their structures. Since all these structures are made up of molecules, they must move molecules around all the time. What are the maintenance processes in living organisms? Let us explore. That is, we will see what are life processes. The maintenance functions of living organisms must go on even when they are not doing anything particular. Even when we are just sitting in the class, even if we are just asleep, this maintenance job has to go on. The processes which together perform this maintenance job are life processes. Since these maintenance processes are needed to prevent damage and breakdown, energy is needed for them. This energy comes from outside the body of the individual organism. So, there must be a process to transfer a source of energy from outside the body of the organism, which we call food, to the inside. A process we commonly call nutrition. If the body size of the organisms is to grow, additional raw material will be needed from outside. Since life on Earth depends on carbon based molecules, most of these food sources are also carbon based. Depending on the complexity of these carbon sources, different organisms can then use different kinds of nutritional processes. The outside sources of energy could be quite varied, since the environment is not under the control of the individual organism. These sources of energy, therefore, need to be broken down or built up in the body and must be finally converted to a uniform source of energy. This source of energy should be used for the various molecular movements needed for maintaining living structures, as well as to the kind of molecules the body needs to grow. For this, a series of chemical reactions in the body are necessary. Oxidizing reducing reactions are some of the most common chemical means to break down molecules. For this, many organisms use oxygen sourced from outside the body. The processes of acquiring oxygen from outside the body and to use it in the process of breakdown of food sources for cellular needs is what we call respiration. In the case of a single celled organism, no specific organs for taking in food, exchange of gases, or removal of waste may be needed because the entire surface of the organism is in contact with the environment. But what happens when the body size of the organism increases and the body design becomes more complex? In multicellular organisms, all the cells may not be in direct contact with the surrounding environment. Thus, simple diffusion will not meet the requirements of all the cells. We have seen previously how, in multicellular organisms, various body parts have specialized in the functions they perform. We are familiar with the idea of these specialized tissues and with their organization in the body of the organism. It is therefore not surprising that the uptake of food and of oxygen will also be the function of specialized tissues. However, this poses a problem since the food and oxygen are now taken up at one place in the body of the organisms while all parts of the body need them. This situation creates a need for transportation system for carrying food and oxygen from one place to another in the body. When chemical reactions use the carbon source and the oxygen for energy generation, they create byproducts that are not only useless for the cells of the body but could even be harmful. These waste byproducts are therefore needed to be removed from the body and discarded outside by a process called excretion. Again, in if the basic rules for body design in multicellular organisms are followed, a specialized tissue for excretion will be developed, which means that the transportation system will need to transport waste away from cells to this excretory tissue. The various processes essential for maintaining life are nutrition, respiration, transportation, and excretion. In absence of any one of these, the life becomes difficult. Let us consider these various processes so essential to maintain life one by one. I know you're liking the video, so come on, guys, give me one like at least.